It was a bright Tuesday morning, the kind where the world seemed to rest under a blanket of calm. The kind of morning that promised nothing extraordinary, just the usual rhythm of life. The sun streamed through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long beams of light across the polished floors. People moved about, each preoccupied with their own concerns. Lawyers shuffled papers, clerks tapped away on keyboards, and voices echoed softly in the large hall. Yet, despite the outward serenity, an undercurrent of tension buzzed just beneath the surface. Officer Greg Patterson walked into the courtroom, his step steady and deliberate. He wore his police uniform like a shield, his belt heavy with tools of authority: handcuffs, a baton, a holstered weapon. To most, Greg was the picture of control and power. His broad shoulders squared as he scanned the room, his sharp blue eyes landing on each face as though silently measuring them. He liked this role, the role of the one in charge, the one people listened to and feared if necessary. Greg's gaze paused when it fell on a girl seated at the back of the courtroom. She sat quietly, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her posture straight. She was young, maybe 16 or 17, with a petite frame and dark curly hair that framed her face. Her skin had a rich, warm tone that seemed to glow softly in the sunlight streaming through the windows. She wore a simple outfit, a plain white blouse and faded jeans, the kind of clothes that didn't draw attention. And yet, there was something about her that made Greg pause for just a second longer than he had planned. Her name was Maya Williams. Greg recognized her immediately, of course. She was the reason he was here. He had arrested her just a week ago, a moment he barely thought twice about. To Greg, Maya was just another teenager from the wrong side of town, a troublemaker, a nobody, the kind of person he thought he had seen 100 times before. His report had labeled her as disruptive and aggressive, a threat to public peace. That's how he saw her then, and as far as he was concerned, that was the whole story. But Maya didn't look like a troublemaker now. She didn't fit the image Greg had painted of her in his mind. She sat still, her back straight, her expression calm. Her eyes, large and brown, seemed to take in everything around her without revealing a single emotion. It was unsettling in a way Greg couldn't quite explain. Most people in her position would be nervous or even angry, maybe fidgeting or whispering to someone beside them. But not Maya. She was just there, like she belonged. And that annoyed him. Greg adjusted his belt and forced himself to look away. It didn't matter what she looked like now, he told himself. He had done his job, followed the rules, and arrested her for breaking the law. The courtroom wasn't the place for emotions or second guesses. It was about facts, and the facts were on his side, or so he believed. But what Greg didn't know, what no one in that courtroom knew, was that Maya Williams wasn't the person they assumed she was. Beneath her calm exterior, beneath the quiet demeanor, she carried a truth so powerful it could shake the foundation of everything Greg believed in. Today, that truth would come to light, and when it did, it would change everything. Underscore 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 on. The courtroom was beginning to fill up. Lawyers filed in with their clients, shuffling papers and exchanging hushed conversations. The judge wasn't there yet, but the energy in the room was already shifting. It was the kind of space where justice was meant to prevail, but Maya knew better than to trust in that promise. She had seen too much, heard too many stories to believe it was always that simple. Maya glanced around the room, her gaze flicking briefly over the faces of strangers. She didn't need to look at Greg Patterson to feel his presence. She had felt it the moment he walked in, the way the air seemed to tighten, the way his footsteps echoed a little too loudly. She didn't flinch, didn't let her eyes linger on him. She had no intention of giving him the satisfaction of thinking he had her attention. Instead, she focused on steadying her breath, keeping her heartbeat calm. She had been preparing for this moment for days, ever since the night she was arrested. It had been a blur of flashing lights and harsh voices, of cold metal handcuffs and the sting of humiliation. She could still feel the weight of Greg's hand on her arm as he pulled her away from the subway platform, his voice stern and unyielding as he accused her of things she hadn't done. "You were disturbing the peace," he had said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Causing a scene." Maya had tried to explain, but Greg hadn't listened. He had already decided who she was and what she had done. To him, she was just another kid from a rough neighborhood, someone who didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. That moment had stayed with her not just because of the injustice, but because it was so painfully familiar. Maya had seen people like Greg before, people who looked at her and saw a stereotype instead of a person. But today, Maya wasn't here to dwell on the past. She was here to set the record straight, to show everyone including Greg Patterson that she wasn't who they thought she was. She wasn't just another face in the crowd, another case number to be filed away. She was Maya Williams, and she had a story to tell. Underscore 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 on. Greg leaned against the wooden table at the front of the courtroom, his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't look at Maya directly, but he could feel her gaze in the periphery of his vision. It irritated him, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way she sat there, so calm and composed, like she wasn't the one on trial. Or maybe it was the quiet confidence she seemed to carry, the kind of confidence that didn't fit with his idea of her. He shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away. This wasn't about her confidence or her demeanor. It was about facts, and the facts were simple. She had been at the subway station, causing a disturbance, refusing to comply when he told her to move along. That's what his report said, and that's what the court would see. It wasn't personal, it was just the job. The sound of the gavel brought the room to attention. Everyone rose as the judge entered, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She took her seat at the bench, and the courtroom settled into silence. Greg straightened his posture, ready to present his case. But as the proceedings began, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maya's lawyer, a young woman with an air of quiet determination, stood to address the court. She spoke with clarity and purpose, her words measured and precise. She painted a different picture of what had happened that night, one that didn't align with Greg's version of events. As she spoke, Greg's confidence began to waver. He told himself it didn't matter, the evidence would support him. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. And Maya, still quiet, still calm, sat there watching, her gaze unwavering. She knew what was coming, and she was ready. The case was straightforward, or at least, Greg Patterson thought it was. He had handled dozens of cases like this before, where a suspect, a young person, often from a struggling neighborhood, caused trouble and needed to be put in their place. The arrest was routine, nothing unusual. Maya Williams had been standing on the crowded subway platform that evening, a buzz of noise and activity surrounding her. Greg had been patrolling the area when he spotted her. She wasn't causing a scene exactly, but there was something about the way she stood, unbothered by the chaos around her, almost too calm. To Greg, her stillness looked like defiance, like she didn't care about the rules or her surroundings. When he approached and told her to move along, she didn't argue or shout. She simply looked at him with those steady brown eyes, her expression calm but unyielding. That look had unnerved him more than he wanted to admit. "You're disturbing the peace," Greg had said, his voice firm. "I'm just waiting for my brother," Maya replied, her tone quiet and measured. But Greg wasn't interested in explanations. He believed what he wanted to believe, that Maya was loitering, being a nuisance, maybe even looking for trouble. His decision was made, and within minutes, Maya was in handcuffs, her wrists bound tightly behind her back. She didn't resist, didn't cry or shout. She simply allowed herself to be led away, her gaze forward, her shoulders straight. It was almost as though she knew something Greg didn't. Now, sitting in the courtroom a week later, Greg leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest. He listened as the prosecutor listed Maya's supposed offenses: loitering, refusing to comply with an officer's orders, disturbing the peace. The words rolled off the prosecutor's tongue with ease, each one reinforcing Greg's confidence. To him, this was an open and shut case. After all, who would believe Maya over him? A decorated officer of the law with years of experience against a teenager who couldn't even afford a lawyer? Greg smirked, glancing briefly at Maya, who sat quietly at the defendant's table. Her posture was as calm as it had been that night on the subway platform. She didn't fidget or whisper to the young woman beside her, the court-appointed lawyer who looked barely out of law school. Instead, Maya sat perfectly still, her hands folded neatly on the table, her gaze fixed on the prosecutor as though she were studying every word. It wasn't defiance, Greg thought. But it wasn't submission either. It was something else entirely, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Underscore 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 on. The hearing moved along at a steady pace, with the prosecutor presenting their case first. They called witnesses, two subway commuters who had been on the platform that night. Both gave similar accounts, describing the scene as chaotic and loud. One man, a middle-aged commuter with a briefcase, claimed he had seen Maya standing too close to the edge of the platform, making others uncomfortable. "I thought she might fall or cause someone else to fall," the man said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "She just stood there. It was odd." The second witness, a woman in her late 20s, described hearing Greg's voice above the noise, ordering Maya to move along. "She didn't listen," the woman said, shaking her head. "She just stood there, staring at him. It was like she was daring him to do something." Greg nodded slightly as the witnesses spoke, satisfied with their testimonies. These were the kinds of details that painted Maya as a troublemaker, someone who didn't respect authority. To him, it was all lining up perfectly. But then, it was the defense's turn. Underscore 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 on. Maya's lawyer stood, a slim folder of papers in her hands. She looked young, almost too young to be handling a case like this. Her movements were calm but deliberate as she approached the bench. Greg couldn't help but scoff internally. This was going to be easy. The lawyer, whose name tag read Sarah Collins, began by asking the judge for permission to play a piece of evidence, a short video taken from Maya's phone. The judge nodded, and the courtroom lights dimmed slightly as a screen lowered on one wall. Sarah inserted a flash drive, and the video began to play. The grainy footage showed the crowded subway platform from Maya's perspective. People milled about, some glancing at their phones, others chatting in low voices. Maya's phone camera panned slowly, capturing the scene. Greg's voice rang out suddenly, loud and commanding. "Move along," he barked, his tone sharp. The camera shifted slightly, focusing on Greg as he approached. He stood tall, his hand resting on his belt. The video showed Maya's response, her voice calm and steady. "I'm waiting for my brother. He'll be here any minute." "Move along," Greg repeated, stepping closer. His voice was louder now, almost harsh. The video captured the tension in the air as commuters began to watch the interaction. Maya didn't argue or raise her voice. She simply stayed where she was, her posture relaxed but firm. The video ended abruptly as Greg reached for Maya's arm, pulling her away from the edge of the platform. The courtroom fell silent as the lights came back on. Greg shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his smirk gone. He hadn't expected this, a clear, unedited recording of the moment in question. The prosecutor tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a wave of her hand. Underscore 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 on. Maya's lawyer continued, her voice calm but firm. Your Honor, the video shows that my client was not disturbing the peace. She was simply waiting for her brother at a public transit station. Officer Patterson's actions were not justified, as my client was not causing harm or posing a threat. Greg felt a flicker of irritation. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had expected Maya to remain silent, to let her lawyer fumble through a weak defense. But this was unexpected. Sarah called her first witness, Maya's younger brother, a boy no older than 13. He stepped forward nervously, glancing around the courtroom as he took his seat. Sarah smiled reassuringly at him. Can you tell us why Maya was at the subway station that night? She asked gently. The boy nodded, his voice soft but clear. She was waiting for me. I was coming home from soccer practice, and I missed the first train. She texted me and said she'd wait for me so I wouldn't have to walk home alone. The courtroom murmured softly. Greg shifted in his seat again, a sinking feeling settling in his stomach. Underscore 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 on. As the hearing progressed, the tension in the room grew thicker. Sarah presented more evidence: subway surveillance footage that corroborated Maya's story, text messages exchanged between Maya and her brother, and even character references from teachers and neighbors who described Maya as a quiet, responsible teenager with no history of troublemaking. Greg's confidence began to waver. The narrative he had constructed in his mind was unraveling, piece by piece. He told himself it didn't matter, he was still an officer of the law, and his word carried weight. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had underestimated Maya, her composure, her resolve, and most of all, her truth. And then, Maya spoke. The atmosphere in the courtroom began to shift, a subtle but unmistakable tension thickening the air. Greg Patterson's smirk, so confident just moments ago, faltered as the first pieces of evidence came to light. His belief in the strength of his case wavered, the foundation of his version of events cracking under the weight of undeniable facts. The prosecutor had finished presenting their side, a string of testimonies from witnesses who seemed unsure, their accounts vague and riddled with assumptions. They described the scene on the subway platform in broad strokes, painting Maya as a figure of disruption without ever providing concrete evidence of wrongdoing. It was the kind of testimony Greg had relied on before, generalizations that played into stereotypes. But something about this time felt different. Maya's lawyer, Sarah Collins, stood with a calm confidence that belied her youth. She approached the bench, holding a slim flash drive between her fingers. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady, I would like to present evidence that will provide a clearer picture of what occurred that evening. Greg shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. He hadn't anticipated this. Evidence. What kind of evidence could a teenager possibly have? The judge nodded, gesturing for Sarah to proceed. The courtroom grew quiet as the lights dimmed and the projector screen lit up. Sarah inserted the flash drive into a laptop, and a video began to play. Underscore 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 on. The footage was grainy but clear enough to capture the scene at the subway platform. The camera's perspective was low, tilted slightly as though it had been propped against something. Maya's voice could be heard faintly in the background, speaking to someone, likely her brother, as later texts would confirm. The platform was busy, people moving about, the noise of trains and announcements echoing in the distance. And then, Greg appeared. He approached from the left side of the screen, his uniform crisp, his posture commanding. The camera shifted slightly, as though Maya had adjusted her phone to capture the interaction. Greg's voice cut through the background noise, sharp and authoritative. "Stop loitering," he barked. The courtroom watched in silence as Maya's response came, her voice calm but firm. "I'm waiting for my brother," she said. "He missed the first train, and I don't want him to walk home alone." Greg's body language in the video was tense, his movements rigid. "Move along," he repeated, his tone harsher now. "This isn't a waiting area." Maya didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice or show signs of aggression. Instead, she stood her ground, her posture steady, her gaze level. "I'm not bothering anyone," she said. "I'll leave as soon as he gets here." The tension in the video was palpable, even through the screen. Commuters in the background began to glance over, their curiosity piqued by Greg's escalating tone. And then, in one swift motion, Greg reached out and grabbed Maya's arm, pulling her away from the edge of the platform. Gasps filled the courtroom. The video continued for a few more seconds, showing Maya's phone shaking as Greg placed her in handcuffs. Her voice remained calm, though tinged with disbelief. "Why are you arresting me?" she asked. "I didn't do anything wrong." The video ended abruptly, the screen fading to black. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, murmurs rippled through the courtroom, a low hum of disbelief and unease. Greg's face had turned pale. His confident demeanor was gone, replaced by a stiffness that betrayed his unease. He hadn't expected this, a direct recording that contradicted his report. The story he had crafted so carefully was unraveling before his eyes. Underscore 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 on. Sarah Collins turned to the judge, her expression composed but resolute. "Your Honor, this video clearly shows that my client was not disturbing the peace. She was waiting for her brother in a public space, as she had every right to do. Officer Patterson's actions were not only unjustified but also excessive." The judge leaned forward, her sharp eyes fixed on Greg. "Officer Patterson," she said, her tone measured, "this footage does not align with your report. Can you explain the discrepancies?" Greg opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He glanced at the prosecutor, hoping for some kind of support, but the man's expression was unreadable. Greg cleared his throat, forcing himself to speak. "The situation was chaotic," he said, his voice unsteady. "I believed she was loitering and refusing to comply." "Believed," the judge echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Or assumed?" The courtroom fell silent again, the weight of the judge's question hanging heavily in the air. Greg shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence slipping further. Underscore 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 on. Maya, who had remained silent throughout most of the hearing, stood suddenly. All eyes turned to her as she stepped forward, her movements deliberate. Her lawyer hesitated for a moment, then nodded, allowing her to speak. "Your Honor," Maya began, her voice clear and composed. "I want to explain what really happened that night." She glanced around the room, her gaze steady but soft. There was no anger in her tone, no resentment. Only a quiet determination to be heard. "I was at the subway station waiting for my brother. He's only 13, and I didn't want him walking home alone. I wasn't loud or disruptive. I wasn't bothering anyone. I was just standing there, checking my phone. Her voice didn't waver as she continued. When Officer Patterson approached me, I didn't understand why he was asking me to leave. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But I stayed calm because I didn't want to make things worse. I thought if I explained myself, he would understand. Maya paused, taking a deep breath. But he didn't listen. He assumed I was a problem before I even said a word. The courtroom was silent, every person hanging on her words. Even Greg couldn't look away, though his expression was unreadable. I recorded the interaction because I've seen things like this happen before, Maya said. I've heard stories of people being treated unfairly, and I didn't want that to happen to me. I didn't think I'd need to use the video, but now I'm glad I have it. It shows the truth. Underscore 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 on. The judge nodded, her expression thoughtful. Thank you, Ms. Williams, she said. You may take your seat. Maya returned to her chair, her movements measured. She didn't look at Greg, didn't acknowledge the prosecutor or the murmuring crowd. She simply sat down, her posture as calm and composed as ever. But her words and the evidence she had presented had left an undeniable mark. Underscore 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 on. The prosecutor attempted to regain control of the narrative, questioning the validity of the video and the intentions behind it. But it was clear that the tide had shifted. The courtroom was no longer on Greg's side. The witnesses who had initially supported his account were beginning to waver, their confidence shaken by the undeniable clarity of the footage. And Greg, for the first time in his career, felt the weight of accountability pressing down on him. This wasn't just another routine case. This was a reckoning. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional shuffle of papers and the soft hum of the air conditioning. The tension hung heavy in the air as the judge leaned forward, her attention fixed on the footage replayed before her. Every detail was undeniable: the calm demeanor of Maya, the raised voice and forceful actions of Greg Patterson. It was as if the truth, so often obscured in cases like these, had finally been laid bare for all to see. Maya stood once more, this time unprompted. Her lawyer gave her a small nod of encouragement, and Maya took a deep breath. The eyes of the courtroom were on her, but her gaze was focused solely on the judge. Your Honor, Maya began, her voice steady, though there was a fire behind her words. I want to say something about who I am because it seems like Officer Patterson assumed a lot about me before he even knew my name. Greg stiffened in his chair. He had been trying to hold onto his composure, but the cracks were showing. His once confident posture now seemed rigid, almost defensive. Maya continued, her tone calm but laced with conviction. I'm a straight-A student. I've worked hard my entire life to make my family proud. I help take care of my younger brother because my mom works long hours at the hospital. I was at the subway station that night because my brother was running late. He missed his train, and I didn't want him walking home alone. I've done this 100 times before without any problems. She paused, letting her words sink in. But that night was different. That night, Officer Patterson didn't see a sister waiting for her brother. He didn't see a teenager who was just trying to get home safely. He saw a problem. He assumed I was causing trouble without any evidence, without any reason. Murmurs spread through the courtroom like ripples in a pond. Maya's words were simple, yet they carried the weight of years of experiences, both hers and countless others who had faced similar judgments. underscore 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 on. Greg's face grew pale. He had thought he had the upper hand, that his uniform and badge would shield him from scrutiny. But Maya's calm, unshakable testimony was dismantling the narrative he had crafted piece by piece. Maya wasn't finished. She turned slightly, her eyes locking onto Greg's. Her gaze was not one of anger, but of determination. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about how people in power use their authority. Officer Patterson assumed he could treat me this way because he thought no one would believe me. But I'm here to tell the truth, and I've also submitted a complaint to Internal Affairs." The courtroom erupted in whispers, the collective buzz of surprise and anticipation. The prosecutor looked uneasy, glancing toward Greg, who now seemed frozen in his chair. Maya continued, her voice unwavering. "This isn't the first time he's acted out of prejudice, and it won't be the last unless someone holds him accountable. Underscore 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 on." The judge held up her hand, calling for order in the courtroom. The murmurs quieted, but the tension remained thick. She turned her attention to Greg, her expression stern. "Officer Patterson, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Greg hesitated, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. "Your Honor," he began, his voice lacking the confidence it once had, "I believed I was acting in the best interest of public safety." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Believed," she echoed, her tone sharp. "Officer Patterson, belief without evidence is not justification for your actions. The footage clearly shows Ms. Williams was not a threat to public safety. In fact, your behavior appears to be both unwarranted and excessive." Greg's jaw tightened, his face growing red. "I followed protocol," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The judge shook her head. "If this is what you call protocol, Officer Patterson, then it raises serious concerns about how you conduct yourself as an officer of the law." Underscore 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 on. Maya's lawyer, Sarah, rose to speak. "Your Honor," she said, her tone measured, "the complaint filed with Internal Affairs outlines several similar incidents involving Officer Patterson. While these cases may not have had the benefit of video evidence like this one, they paint a troubling picture of a pattern of behavior." Sarah handed a folder to the judge, who flipped through its contents with a furrowed brow. "This is extensive," the judge said, her voice low but clear. She looked up at Greg. "Officer Patterson, it seems you have a history of complaints alleging bias and excessive force. How do you respond to these allegations?" Greg's face was now ashen. He glanced around the courtroom, his eyes darting to the prosecutor, then to his colleagues seated in the gallery. No one came to his defense. Greg began, but the words caught in his throat. He had always relied on his badge, his authority, to protect him. But today, it was not enough. Underscore 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 on. The judge turned back to Maya. "Ms. Williams," she said, her tone softening, "your courage in bringing this evidence forward is commendable. Cases like these often go unheard, and it's clear that your actions have shed light on a serious issue." Maya nodded, her expression calm but resolute. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said. "I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." The judge sighed, glancing down at the papers before her. I'll be recommending a full investigation into Officer Patterson's conduct. Furthermore, all charges against Ms. Williams are dismissed. This case is closed." The gavel came down with a decisive crack, and the courtroom erupted once more into whispers and murmurs. But this time, the energy was different. It wasn't just tension, it was a mix of relief, satisfaction, and a sense that justice, for once, had been served. Underscore 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 on. Greg sat frozen in his chair, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. The shield of authority he had always relied upon was gone, stripped away by the simple truth spoken by a teenager who refused to be silenced. Maya, on the other hand, stood tall. She gathered her belongings and walked out of the courtroom with her head held high. Reporters swarmed her as she stepped outside, microphones thrust in her direction. She paused, her voice clear and unwavering as she spoke. "Sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone who's been treated unfairly. Today wasn't just about me, it was about making sure this doesn't keep happening." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of change. And as she walked away, the crowd parted, watching her with a newfound respect. The gavel's echo faded, signaling the end of the courtroom proceedings. The judge's ruling in Maya's favor was a pivotal moment, but the ripple effects were only beginning. The crowd in the courtroom buzzed with murmurs of approval and quiet conversations. Some nodded in agreement with the outcome, while others exchanged surprised glances, as though they had just witnessed something they never thought possible. Maya sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of the decision sink in. The charges against her were gone, her name cleared, but she knew this was only one battle in a much larger fight. She glanced at Sarah Collins, her lawyer, who gave her a reassuring smile. "You did it, Maya," Sarah said softly. "No," Maya replied, her voice steady. "We did it. And it's not over yet." For Officer Greg Patterson, the aftermath of the trial was swift and unrelenting. News of the courtroom revelation spread like wildfire. The once respected officer, known for his authority and clean record, was now at the center of a growing scandal. The footage of his actions, combined with Maya's calm but damning testimony, painted a picture of a man who had abused his power. Internal Affairs launched a full-scale investigation into Greg's conduct. At first, he tried to brush it off, clinging to the hope that this was just a temporary setback. But as more evidence came to light, his confidence crumbled. Complaints from other individuals, long buried in the precinct's files, began to resurface. People who had been too afraid to speak out before now felt emboldened by Maya's victory. Greg's colleagues, many of whom had once admired him, started to distance themselves. The camaraderie he had relied on for years was gone. Whispers filled the precinct hallways, officers exchanging cautious glances whenever he walked by. The shield of authority he had worn so proudly was no longer a source of respect, it was a symbol of suspicion. Eventually, Greg was suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the investigation. The badge he had once carried with pride now sat in a drawer, its weight no longer a symbol of honor but a reminder of the accountability he had tried to escape. While Greg's reputation crumbled, Maya's influence in her community grew. News outlets picked up her story, highlighting her courage and determination. She became a symbol of hope, a reminder that standing up for justice could make a difference, even against seemingly insurmountable odds. At first, the attention was overwhelming. Reporters camped outside her home, eager for interviews. Community leaders reached out to praise her bravery, and local organizations invited her to speak at events. But Maya remained grounded. She didn't see herself as a hero, she was just a girl who had spoken the truth when it mattered most. Her neighbors, however, saw her as much more. In her small neighborhood, where trust in the justice system had been fragile at best, Maya became a source of inspiration. People who had once felt powerless began to find their voices. Stories of similar encounters with officers surfaced, individuals sharing their experiences in community meetings and online forums. Maya attended these meetings, often sitting quietly in the back until someone called on her to speak. When she did, her words were simple but powerful. "What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone," she would say. "We have to hold people in power accountable not just for ourselves, but for the people who come after us." The public outcry that followed Maya's trial didn't just focus on Greg Patterson, it targeted the entire system that had allowed his actions to go unchecked. Activists and community leaders demanded change, organizing protests and petition drives. The precinct, under mounting pressure, announced a series of reforms aimed at rebuilding trust. Mandatory bias training was implemented for all officers, a step that many in the community had been calling for years. A civilian oversight committee was formed to review complaints against officers, ensuring greater transparency and accountability. Body cameras, once sporadically used, became mandatory for all officers on patrol. Maya watched these changes unfold with a mixture of hope and skepticism. She knew that policies on paper didn't always translate to real change on the ground. But she also knew that her actions had sparked something that couldn't easily be ignored. For Greg, the months following the trial were a period of painful introspection. At first, he was angry at Maya, at Sarah Collins, at the system that he felt had betrayed him. But as the investigation progressed and he was forced to confront the evidence against him, Greg began to see himself in a different light. He thought back to his early days as an officer, when he had genuinely believed in the idea of serving and protecting. Somewhere along the way, that belief had been overshadowed by a sense of superiority, a reliance on authority that had clouded his judgment. He had stopped seeing people like Maya as individuals and instead viewed them through the lens of his own biases. For the first time, Greg considered the possibility that he wasn't the hero of the story, that he had been wrong, not just in Maya's case, but in others as well. It was a humbling realization, one that left him grappling with the weight of his choices. As the months passed, Maya found herself stepping into a new role, not just as a student or a sister, but as a voice for change. She continued to attend community meetings, working alongside activists to push for reforms. She also began visiting schools and youth centers, sharing her story with other young people. One afternoon, she stood in front of a group of middle school students, her brother sitting proudly in the front row. "It's not always easy to speak up," she told them. "Sometimes it feels like the whole world is against you. But if you know you're telling the truth, that's all that matters. Don't let anyone make you feel small." Her words resonated deeply with the students, many of whom had already faced challenges of their own. After her talk, a young girl approached her, clutching a notebook to her chest. "You're really brave," the girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya smiled. "So are you," she replied. "Don't ever forget that." The impact of Maya's case extended far beyond her neighborhood. It became a turning point in the broader conversation about police accountability and systemic bias. Advocates used her story as a rallying cry, pushing for changes at both the local and national levels. Greg's investigation concluded with a formal hearing, during which he was found guilty of misconduct. His badge was permanently revoked, and he was forced to resign from the force. It was a humiliating end to a career that had once been filled with promise. But even in his disgrace, Greg found a sliver of redemption. He began volunteering at a local community center, working with young people and listening to their stories. It was his way of trying to make amends, though he knew it could never erase the harm he had caused. For Maya, life gradually returned to a new kind of normal. She continued excelling in school, her determination stronger than ever. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer, inspired by Sarah Collins and the fight for justice she had witnessed firsthand. Her neighborhood, once overlooked and marginalized, began to see signs of renewal. The changes sparked by Maya's case brought a sense of hope, a belief that their voices could make a difference. And as Maya walked through her community, she carried herself with quiet confidence. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she also knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. Because sometimes, one voice was all it took to change the world. As Maya stepped out of the courthouse, the first thing she noticed was the sun. It was bright and warm, shining down on her face like a quiet reminder that the storm she had just endured was finally clearing. The air felt lighter, yet charged with energy. The crowd outside was massive, reporters holding cameras and microphones, community members with signs of support, and onlookers curious about the young girl who had stood up to a system many believed was unshakable. Her lawyer, Sarah Collins, walked beside her, a small but proud smile on her face. "Take your time, Maya," she said gently. "Say what you feel." Maya nodded, inhaling deeply as she approached the microphones. The reporters began shouting questions all at once, their voices blending into a chaotic blur. "Do you think justice was served today? How do you feel about Officer Patterson's suspension? What's next for you?" Maya raised her hand, signaling for quiet. Slowly, the noise died down. The cameras zoomed in on her, eager to capture her every word. Her heart raced, but she stood tall, her head held high. "Power doesn't make you right," she began, her voice steady but soft. "The truth does." Her words carried over the crowd, silencing even the murmurs from the back. She looked directly into one of the cameras, speaking not just to those gathered in front of her but to everyone who might see her later on the news. "Sometimes, the people you think have the least power, are the ones who bring the most change," she said, her tone calm yet firm. The crowd erupted into applause, cheers rippling through the air like waves. But Maya wasn't finished. She raised her hand again, and the noise quieted. "I'm not here because I wanted attention or because I wanted to fight," she continued. "I'm here because I had to stand up for what's right. What happened to me wasn't fair, and it wasn't just. But I'm not the only one this has happened to. There are so many people out there who don't have a voice, who feel like they can't speak up. This wasn't just about me, it was about all of us." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "We all deserve to be treated with respect, no matter who we are or where we come from. And if we see something wrong, we can't stay silent. We have to speak up, even when it's hard. Even when we're scared." As Maya finished speaking, the crowd erupted once more, this time with louder cheers and applause. Signs were raised higher, some with messages of support for Maya, others calling for broader reforms in the justice system. Strangers in the crowd exchanged nods and smiles, united by a shared sense of purpose. Among them was an older woman holding a hand-painted sign that read, "Truth wins." She wiped a tear from her eye as she watched Maya, pride and hope shining on her face. "Maya's so young," the woman said to the person next to her. "But look at her. She's braver than most of us ever dream of being." Across town, Greg Patterson sat in his small apartment, watching Maya's speech on the evening news. His face was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed a mix of emotions: shame, regret, and perhaps a sliver of understanding. He had spent the days since the trial in a fog of disbelief, his suspension looming over him like a dark cloud. He had been stripped of his badge, his authority, and his reputation. But as he watched Maya speak, something inside him shifted. For the first time, he saw her not as a defiant teenager or an opponent in court, but as a person, someone who had stood up for what she believed in despite the odds stacked against her. Her words echoed in his mind, "Power doesn't make you right. The truth does." Greg turned off the TV, the room plunging into silence. He sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen, his thoughts heavy. He didn't know what his future held, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't keep pretending that he had been in the right. Not anymore. In the weeks that followed, Maya's story continued to spread. News outlets across the country picked up the footage from the trial, showcasing the moment when a young girl stood up to a powerful institution and won. Social media was flooded with messages of support, hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #TruthWins trending for days. Maya herself was overwhelmed by the attention. She had never imagined her fight for justice would become such a big story. At first, it was intimidating. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and the constant stream of reporters and messages left her feeling exposed. But as time passed, Maya began to see the impact of her actions. People from all walks of life reached out to her, sharing their own stories of injustice and thanking her for giving them hope. Some sent letters, others left comments online, but the message was always the same: because of you, I feel like I can stand up too. One day, Maya received a letter from a young boy in another state. His handwriting was messy, and the paper was crumpled, but his words were clear. "Dear Maya," the letter read. "I saw you on the news, and you are so brave. I get bullied a lot at school, and I don't usually stand up for myself. But after hearing your story, I think I'm going to try. Thank you for being so strong." Maya held the letter close, tears welling in her eyes. It was in that moment she realized the full weight of what she had done. Her fight wasn't just about her anymore, it was about everyone who felt like they didn't have a voice. Maya's life changed in many ways after the trial. She continued her studies, throwing herself into her schoolwork with renewed determination. She began volunteering at a local community center, working with younger kids to inspire them and teach them about their rights. Her dream of becoming a lawyer grew stronger with each passing day. She wanted to help others the way Sarah had helped her, to fight for justice and make sure no one else had to go through what she had. But Maya also knew that the journey wouldn't be easy. There were still people who doubted her, who criticized her for speaking out. There were still systems that needed to change, walls that needed to be broken down. And yet, she remained undeterred. Because she had learned something powerful through her experience: one voice, when used with courage and conviction, could echo far beyond what anyone might expect. Years later, as Maya looked back on that pivotal moment in her life, she often thought about the words she had spoken on the courthouse steps. "Power doesn't make you right. The truth does." They were simple words, but they had carried her through one of the hardest battles of her life. They had resonated with people across the country, inspiring change in ways she couldn't have imagined. And as she continued her journey, Maya carried those words with her, a reminder of the strength that came from standing up for what was right even when it wasn't easy. Because sometimes, the smallest voices could spark the biggest changes. And Maya knew, deep in her heart, that she would never stop fighting for a world where truth and justice prevailed.